There's really nothing more exciting than a heavyweight championship fight in the UFC. There just isn't. Like, you could mention Conor, you could mention Nate, you could mention all the... No, it doesn't matter. It's heavyweight title fight time, and we're talking UFC 260. My name is Art from the Art of Combat podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on this awesome Friday. We got one more sleep, people, and then it's UFC 260 time. I am joined by my friend, Matt from Serenity CBD. How are you, brother?
Hey, great. Thanks for having me, as always.
Yeah, you know, when you think of this fight in particular, and we're going to start right with the heat. We're not going to go from the prelims. No, let's start with the heat.
Love it.
Stipe Miocic against Francis Ngannou. 20-3 for Stipe Miocic. 15-3 for Francis Ngannou. Francis Ngannou riding not only 4 straight knockouts in the heavyweight division against Curtis Blaydes and others, but in the first round. It's insane.
Less than 2 minutes.
Yeah, going up against, in the rematch, Stipe Miocic, who has beat so many people. JDS, I mean, sure, Francis beat JDS, but Mark Hunt. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Arguably, in our generation, the greatest heavyweight of all time. Yeah. So let's start with the heat, man. Yep. I mean, when it comes to this fight, I'm excited because I think there's a couple things that I look at. And just an update, some breaking news. Both fighters have made weight. I know in heavyweights, it's like, can you make 265? Both of them have made weight. But what intrigues me about this fight is, and Broadwell mentioned this, I'm going to start calling him Delusional Broadwell. He seems to think that Stipe is not scared at all. Look at Francis. How are you not scared? I don't care if you're Godzilla going up against Francis. You've got a little bit of worriness in you.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, he's got that chin. He's enormous. I mean, how could you not have a little bit of fear in you?
Yeah, I mean, this fight just has fireworks written all over it. Even their first match, it was 5 rounds. Shout out to Francis for going all 5 rounds. But it was a grapple fest. It was a clinch fest. What do you see happening differently in this fight for both fighters?
Well, in all honesty, from Stipe's camp, I think it's going to be very similar.
Really?
I personally think it's going to be a very similar fight. I think he's a very technical fighter. I think they always have a game plan going in, especially like going back to the Cormier fight, that the second one. I remember his game plan was to tire him out in the first round, and that's what he did. He let Cormier have that first round, and I'm thinking that he does the same thing with Ngannou here. He understands that Ngannou has that chin. People know he's got that chin. He can take punches. You got to be weary of his comeback, his strikes. But I do believe that Ngannou telegraphs some of his strikes. I really, really do. And I think Stipe is going to be careful with that. I think it's going to be very similar. I think he knows he needs to get him in the clinch. He needs to take him down. For me, I have been going back and forth on this all week. All week, I was Ngannou. And I'll be honest, I am Stipe. The public is definitely on Ngannou.
Okay.
And that is why I believe he's favored, and I believe that's why the line continues to move. I personally think, again, the decision is a plus 450. They're saying that's about an 18% chance to hit, and I think it's a little higher than that, personally.
When I look at this fight, there's a couple things that surprise me, and I guess in a Vegas odds kind of way.
Yeah.
So Stipe's the underdog. Again, he's always the underdog.
Which is crazy.
Which is kind of odd to me, considering how he literally manhandled Francis Ngannou. He learned the playbook from Derek Lewis. Yeah. Not. Like, that fight was the most boring fight ever. But he kind of learned, like, the pacing of Derek Lewis in that fight when Francis fought Derek, and arguably the most boring heavyweight fight of all time. Yeah. Here's where I have a problem, okay? You look at Curtis Blaydes, Cain Velasquez, Junior Dos Santos, Rosenstruck. Those are all first-round finishes for Francis Ngannou, okay? And we're not talking about a padded record. You know, you mention Khabib sometimes, and you're like, the record's kind of padded, let's be honest. Like, I think had he had the Tony fight, had he had another Conor fight, then you'd be like, okay, that record's not padded. But I look at it like this. If it goes over 2.5 rounds, it's Stipe's night, okay? If it's under 2.5 rounds, you know how it's going to end. Yes. Stipe, the chances of Stipe knocking out Francis are slim to none. The man has a chin. I don't want to. I learned after the Derek Brunson and Kevin Holland fight not to bet with my heart. You bet with your brain. Matt is an expert at that. I'm sure the NBA picks that you make for Detroit sports bettors you love for some players. I wanted Kyle Kazuma to get 35 points the other night. He's a Flint native. But here's the deal. Boy. I'm gonna make a pick with my brain right now. And if Broadwell's watching, he's going to be like, you're an idiot, blah, blah, blah. Broadwell, you're not even here. You dipped out because you're scared to face me on this. I think Francis gets it done this time, and here's why. This stat. 70% of title fight rematches, the loser of the first fight wins the second fight. Think about that. That's an actual stat. That's not something that I made up in my brain because I want Francis to win. Do I think Stipe is arguably the greatest heavyweight of all time? Yes, definitely. No question. But Francis, I think, has been really quiet on what he's been doing. Yeah. What has he been doing? Has he been working on stopping those takedowns? Has he been working on possible submissions? You never know. I mean, the man's massive. If I have to hear one more time he could hit like a Ford Escort, we get it. We all know that. I think Francis gets it done, and I think he gets it done early. The reason why I say that is look at the first Daniel Cormier fight with Stipe. It was in the later rounds when it happened, but Stipe can get caught. It can happen. They both have 3 losses on their record. Stipe is more road ready for the 5-round fight. I'm going to do a crazy prediction, but I'm doing it with my brain and not with my heart this time. After doing research and looking at the records of both athletes, I'm going with Francis early. I would say Francis within 3 rounds. If it doesn't happen, Francis is in for another long night. So you've got Stipe by decision. I've got Francis by KO by the 3rd round. If you make those picks, and you can even look, if you're like, wow, you're really making those picks, go look at the odds. The odds makers are saying, like, sure, you know, Stipe is the underdog, but Francis can get it done in the first 3 rounds. You look at some of those odds, it's like plus 150. It's not a crazy prediction that I'm making here. So I've got Francis early in the fight. I think he can get it done. If he doesn't get it done, though, by the 3rd round, I mean, it's going to be another example as to why wrestling is becoming so dominant in MMA.
Yeah, and to add to that real quick, the reason that I went away from Ngannou was just because the fights that he had after Stipe, I wish I could have just saw something a little different. He just knocks everyone out in under 2 minutes. And, you know, he's able to get that done, and, you know, you can't fault him for that. But he hasn't had a victory that's gone past 2 minutes since 2016. So that was kind of the thing that, man, it just made things tough.
Well, and here's the thing. When it comes to Francis and Stipe, Francis has the possibility to knock you out in seconds. He's proved it 4 times in a row. Heavyweights. Like Rosenstruck, people doubt Rosenstruck. The man can hit. Sure, he's on a skid right now. He lost to Gane, and then he lost to, you know, Francis. And that sucks because I look at that fighter as like a Francis Jr. almost. But here's the difference, is that Francis is going to swing wild. Stipe isn't going to answer back. No. He's going to pivot and go around the octagon. Now, if Stipe was one of those fighters to where he's coming in and he's knocking you out in the first round, I'd say Francis isn't going to do that. Francis might be a little bit more patient in this fight, but he has the possibility to let fireworks go off at any given second.
For sure. And I believe, and let me ask you this, I believe the over-under for this is 1.5 rounds. What do you think about that?
The over-under that I put a place to bet on was 2.5.
Okay.
I picked Francis. And I know I'm going against what I said right now, but the odds looked really good. Okay, it was a parlay, and it was like, you know what? I'll throw a nickel in that one. A little sprinkle. If it does go over 2.5 rounds, Francis still does have a chance. But when you say 2.5 rounds, you still have that 30 seconds of round 3, and I still think that Francis is possibly has the cardio enough to pull a knockout in the 3rd round. So when it's over 2.5 rounds, I'm going to give him the 3rd round too, and he has to finish it within the 3rd round. You know, so I'm going to say over. It's a tough parlay to put in, but if you've got some bets and you're like, I'm confident in this and this and this, does it hurt to go for the fight to go over 2.5 rounds? I don't think so. I think Francis could pull out a late in the fight KO. It's going to be tough though against Stipe. I know I'm contradicting myself because this fight, honestly, it's so hard to pick. It's so hard to pick. You've got a man who has knocked out some of the top contenders 4 fights in a row, going up against arguably the greatest heavyweight of all time. So let's move on to the next fight. Very intriguing fight with this. Vicente Luque against Tyron Woodley. You know, what's funny is I'm looking at Tyron Woodley's record right here. He had the loss to Kamaru Usman. He was supposed to fight Robbie Lawler again. That didn't happen. He was supposed to fight Leon Edwards. That didn't happen. Lost to Gilbert Burns. Lost to Kobe Covington. Now he's going up against Vicente Luque, who is on a 2-fight win streak against Nico Price and Randy Brown. What do you see as the biggest difference between these guys' records? Like, what stands out to you the most, Matt?
For me, it's just Woodley's head. I think Woodley is out of it. I mean, I'm off the Woodley bus. I'm thinking this is it for him. I think Luque puts an end to Woodley. I think he might be done after this, to be honest. I think the Colby Covington fight, he even came out and said that was the hardest loss he has ever taken. And me and you discussed this beforehand, basically saying that if there is anyone in the UFC you do not want to lose to, boy, is it Colby Covington.
Oof, yeah.
And I personally think that Woodley, and he is someone, you can see him in the cage. You can see it on his face. He wears it. And I just believe that Luque gets this done, and I think it's a knockout.
You think it's a knockout?
I think it's a knockout.
Wow. See, what I notice about Vicente Luque is he is a game fighter. I mean, he will go all the rounds if you want. I mean, I look at this fight against Barberena. That was one of my favorite fights because it's two warriors just swinging for the fences.
Yeah.
Here's the difference. When you look at, Tyron Woodley 19-6, Vicente Luque 19-7. What I like about this pay-per-view is these picks are hard. I'm not going to sit here and say boom, 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 and it's all done. These picks are hard because a lot of these records are very, very similar. Now, when you mention he might be done after this, I will 100% agree. I think Vicente Luque can definitely get it done, and this is a huge fight for Vicente Luque.
Yes,
I mean, you look at Tyron Woodley.
Yes,
Tyron Woodley's record is great. It's not terrible, 19-6. It's not a 500 record by any means, but at the same time, the man is just beaten, broke down, and bruised. I think
that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, I think this is his get the hell out of Dodge. You're out of the UFC, and he goes with his buddy, Anthony Pettis, maybe to the PFL. I mean, there's going to be so many options for Woodley after this, and I'm not like Woodley's a shit fighter, he's a piece of shit. Like, no, the guy had his moment. Yeah. But when you have to play the Koscheck knockout video every single time from 2002, from way back in the day, the only other knockout that he had was Robbie Lawler. Ever since then, it's been a shit show. I'm going Vicente Luque. I don't want to say knockout, and I don't want to say submission. It's out there. Obviously, if those parlay options are in there, I've mentioned it before with the parlays, you've got Vicente Luque by submission. The odds are actually pretty high for that, but he does have it on his record. You could throw that in there. I'm going to go Vicente Luque decision. Okay. I think he's got the cardio. He's going to outpunch him, outstrike him. We know Tyron Woodley's weakness is clinch strikes and clinch grappling. Vicente Luque's good at that. So that's my pick for that fight. Moving on, I didn't even want to talk about this fight because I despise this man with all of my heart. I can't stand Sugar Sean O'Malley, but we'll talk about him. Let's talk about it. Sugar Sean O'Malley going up against Thomas Almeida. Almeida's got a 22-4 record. Sugar Sean O'Malley 12-1. There is that one in there, O'Malley. You can't say that you didn't lose to Cheeto Vera. That's why I hate him so much. What are you looking at this fight? What do you see? Because the number one thing that I notice is the record difference. 22-4 against the 12-1. There's a lot of experience on Almeida's side.
Yeah, you can't deny that. And again, O'Malley, if you did watch the press conference, I personally, I'm an O'Malley fan. And I know we differ on that a little bit, but I really liked how O'Malley was in the press conference. I felt like he was very calm, collected, honest about everything besides the one loss. And he basically spoke on Almeida and said that this could be one of his last chances, that if he loses this fight, he might be out of the UFC, so he might be pressing a little bit. And that's one thing, when I hear something like that too, I think that he might be pressing and O'Malley might find an opening. And he might catch him with something or something along those lines. And that's where I'm going. And again, I know this is a big public one too, but I've got the O'Malley knockout.
Wow. Okay. I mean, to me, sure, I could sit here and go, oh my gosh, that's crazy. This is another betting with my brain and betting with my heart. I'm going to be honest. Do I want Sugar Sean O'Malley to lose? Absolutely. I think not only the comments that were made about Megan Anderson on his podcast that he allowed Casey Kennedy to say, I'm getting into the personalness of it, but I also have a backing of you got your foot and leg and ankle wrecked by Marlon Cheeto Vera, and then you said that it wasn't a loss. And still to this day, you're delusional O'Malley. That's what I'm going to call you.
Yeah, he said some nerve thing. Like he hit
and listen, it could have been a nerve thing, but take the loss. Take the loss. You can't say
crazy things happen.
Yeah, it was an Ecuadorian foot. It doesn't count. That's not how this works. When you look at Almeida, he's lost to Jimmy Rivera. He's lost to Rob Font. He's lost to Jonathan Martinez on a decision. Okay, here's where I want you to think about this, though. O'Malley, on the other hand, has a loss to Marlon Cheeto Vera, which is a top contender. I mean, sure, you could say he lost in the Jose Aldo fight, and I'd agree with you, but barely. He's got a win against Eddie Wineland. He hasn't faced someone like an Almeida. He just hasn't. Now, Almeida, if he loses this, he's gone. He's gone because he's not a draw. Let's be honest. Like, I like him. His loss to Cody Garbrandt broke my heart. I mean, I like Cody Garbrandt, too. That was a nasty knockout. He's got wins over Brad Pickett, Albert Morales. So here's my thing. I'm really stuck on this fight. I would love to tell you a pick. It's hard. It's hard.
I completely understand where you're coming from here, too.
We're allowed one mulligan on the fights to where you can pass on it. I'm honestly going to pass on this one.
Okay.
We've got all these fights still to go over. Mike Broadwell made this the thing to where he's like, I'm not going to bet on that one. I'm not going to bet on this one.
Okay.
Because I look at it like Almeida's got the record to get it done against O'Malley, and he has faced that competition, but he's been 50-50 on it if he gets a win or a loss. I'm going to pass on this one. If you're putting together a parlay, pass on this one.
Yeah, and one thing I will say is the minus 322, that is absurdly high.
Yeah.
It should not be that high.
No.
And that's what you need to see. Like, when you're looking at this stuff, if you see something at minus 322 or even Ngannou at minus 125, they are public favorites, and the public love those guys. It's the sexy pick, and it's going to drive the line up, okay? So when you look at that, you need to realize what's also going on.
Right.
The minus 322 is very high.
Yeah.
Okay? God, I would never take that straight up.
No.
I would find something else.
I mean, listen, if he's facing a blind guy who's also deaf and has one leg, then sure, it's minus 322. But I mean, this is
it's the fight game.
It's the fight game. And the reason why it's like this is because Almeida is on a skid right now.
Yes.
I mean, he's on a skid. You take away that
Tough
skid.
losses.
You take away those skids, though, and obviously I know it's impossible to do. You take away those skids, I think it's a pick'em fight.
Yeah.
You know, every dog has their day. Can Almeida face a former top contender? And can O'Malley face a former top contender? But can Almeida get back to that top contender mentality?
Yeah.
That's what's going to be most important.
That's a huge thing in the UFC, too, is what is going on up here.
Massive. Moving on to next fight on the pay-per-view is going to be Jillian Robertson against Miranda Maverick. This is an easy one, guys. I mean, it really is. You look at Miranda Maverick's record. She's on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 fight, in a row.
Yeah.
Sure, she made her debut just with her last fight. She did get a doctor stoppage with a cut in round 1, but a lot of decisions, a lot of rear naked chokes. You look at Jillian Robertson. I mean, she's riding a 9-5 record, comes out of American Top Team, which is great.
Yep.
But it's 1 win, 1 loss. 1 win, 1 loss. Matt, what do you got?
I got Maverick all day with that one. I think that one's just pretty simple.
Yeah, decision or submission?
That one, I'm going to go submission.
I think so, too.
I'm going to go submission. I think that she can get this done within the 3 rounds. Yeah, I like
the other thing is that although Jillian Robertson has had wins like against Courtney Casey with a rear naked choke, she's also had losses due to submission. So you got to look at that when you're making these bets. And props to you, Matt, because you really taught me on the Detroit Sports Bettors Twitter. If you haven't followed them yet, make sure that you give them a follow. Pick and choose what we're saying right now. Don't take, like, if you're like, man, I like Miranda Maverick, but I'm not going to pick, like, on a actual method because that's crazy. I'll agree with you. It is.
Yeah.
Like, it's a lottery ticket at that point.
For sure.
If you pick them straight up, that's more of a safe bet. You're picking just on the money line.
Yeah.
With me, I like to go a little risky and then complain about it on Monday. So
Exactly. And I think that's a great point, too, because every bettor is different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And what we're trying to do is we're trying to highlight things for you that you can see, and you might like something a little better than us.
Yeah.
So in that parlay that someone sent in from last week, it was a little bit of everyone's picks, and that's what we want. We want to point out facts for you, and then you can create your own conclusion.
And that's the thing, like, when you're going down this card and you're like, well, man, Matt wants Stipe, Art wants Francis.
Yeah.
Art's dumb and doesn't get his picks right. I'm going with Matt, but then I think he's right on the, on this. You pick and choose.
Yeah.
Grab from the claw and decide, I want this one. I want this one. Like,
exactly.
Make those picks.
And there are more options than just the money line.
Right.
There's
And that's what
over,
makes
under
it exciting to me. Like,
Yeah.
there's one parlay that I have that's 21 grand, but the chances of it happening,
You gotta love it.
I did like a 9-fight parlay. And within those 9 fights on the money line, I went 2 for decisions, like method.
Yep.
If that hits, that would be awesome.
Oh.
If it doesn't, I'm not going to cry about it because I put a buck on it. Like, it's so tough. Moving on to the last fight that's going to be on the main card. We got 3 more to cover here, but this one's the last one on the main card. Jamie, I always have a hard time. Malarkey against Kama Worthy. This fight's going to be exciting, too.
Yeah,
a great fight to kick off the pay-per-view. Who do you got? Because I see plus 110 underdog for the Jamie Malarkey against Kama Worthy, who's 16-7 at a minus 125.
Yeah. So me personally, I got Worthy here. It is a close fight. Jamie Malarkey has lost his last 2 fights.
Yes.
Again, this is another fighter that might be make or break with the UFC. And if he does lose, again, he might be gone. So what happens? These fighters press. they press. They try and get that knockout. They might try and push a little harder to get you in a certain position, something along those lines. And Karma Worthy, he has had 9 knockout victories.
Yeah.
That, and it's sitting there at a plus 225. I personally think Jamie Malarkey is going to leave himself open.
Yes.
And I think Worthy is going to take advantage.
So do you think Worthy with the knockout?
I personally am taking the knockout plus 225.
That's a great pick because when I look at this, wins over Luis Pena, Devontae Smith, Joey Munoz, I mean, sure, they're not all well known.
Yeah.
But, Luis Pena is a tall fighter. That dude's tall. He's the violent Bob Ross. When I look at this fight here, I look at it like, okay, are they going by record? Because if they're going by record, then Worthy sits where he sits for a reason. 16-7. He's a slight underdog, but it doesn't make sense because 16-7 would mean that you should be the favorite. But they're looking at this and not the record.
Yeah.
They're looking at it like Worthy has knockouts. He's got submissions. Malarkey, sure, that 12-4 record looks really nice and it looks really pretty and a plus 10. But for those odds, no, don't do it. You're not going to make much back off of plus 110. So I've got Worthy. I'll admit, I was hoping that Matt was going to say knockout because I'm there too.
Yeah.
When you're on a skid, you want to do whatever it takes to get that win.
They press.
Yeah. So let's move on. We got 2 more fights to cover. Alonzo Menefield against the 3-day notice Fabio Cherant. This is crazy to me.
Yeah.
This is such a, to me, this is the one fight that if I'm looking at upsets, it's this fight, and I'll tell you why. Alonzo is 9-2. Cherant, he's 7-1. When I look at this, you're coming in on a short notice, but Cherant is no walk in the park.
No.
What do you think, Matt?
No, I'm in the same book. I mean, I've been reading up on this fight all week, and it is short notice, and that's the one thing. It's a question mark. How is their cardio? What type of shape are they in? But I will say a lot of these fighters are constantly training.
Always.
When they're not doing the UFC, these guys are doing triathlons and all this other shit. So they are in shape.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So plus 250, that's some good odds right there. I think that's one I'm definitely going to throw a sprinkle on.
The other thing is Alonso's got losses to OSP, also Devin Clark. He's on a skid right now, and he's still the betting favorite at minus 277.
Yeah,
if you're feeling risky, go ahead and do a fight prop of possibly Cherant getting the knockout.
Yeah.
Because you've got a fighter here with Alonzo who has lost to a counter left hook. He lost to a decision, and then he's got wins over Paul Craig and everything like that, and that looks good. When you look at Fabio, Fabio, I'm sorry, I keep calling him. I don't know if it's Fabio or Fabio.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Well, we'll just go with we'll go with this nickname Water Buffalo.
Yeah.
Because that's the coolest damn nickname I've ever heard. So when you look at Water Buffalo, Water Buffalo's on a 3-fight win streak with a decision, and anaconda choke. I know if you're a fighter, you want that knockout. These two dudes are going to swing and bang. It's going to be a great fight. I've got Water Buffalo. I'm going to go Water Buffalo for the knockout. I think he wants to make an entrance into the UFC. This is the way to do it. He's coming from the LFA. He's got plenty of opportunity and short notice here to get something done.
Cool.
Let's move on to the last fight that we're going to cover. Is going to be Jared Gooden against Abu Akar Nurmagomedov. Jeez.
Yep.
That's the one thing. Terry had asked me earlier, he's like, how do you pronounce these names? And I was like, I fumble through.
Yeah, they are.
Because you know what? And if anyone from Woodward
Sportsland
Sportsland is like, wow, we got a real idiot up here, listen to Bruce Buffer and listen to Dana.
It is not easy.
They mispronounce him all the time. John Anik is probably the only one who I haven't heard fumble that much. Rogan's fumbled. Bisbing's fumbled. DC, he's a comic genius, and he fumbles, and it's hilarious.
No, exactly.
But let's talk about Nurmagomedov against Gooden. 17-5 record for Gooden. Nurmagomedov is 15-3-1. I think I know who you're going to pick and the method of victory, but go ahead and try and surprise me.
Yeah, so, I mean, this one's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Tough to pronounce the name. Nurmagomedov.
Yeah.
Nurmagomedov. Okay. So, yeah, again, Gooden has struggled on the ground. I mean, what is, Khabib and that camp, what do they pride themselves in?
Right.
They suffocate you. They get you on the ground. You can't move. This is just a tough style to go against in the UFC. You look at guys like Oliveira as well. They just suffocate you, and it's a tough thing to defend. He's minus 227 for a reason. He's up and coming within the division. And on top of that, the plus 130 for, was it the decision, was that? Or it might have been, was it the submission? plus 130?
Probably submission.
Submission, I would assume. Yeah, because that's what I was going to go with, was the submission for plus 130. I think he's going to get him on the ground. I think Gooden is going to struggle, try and get out of it, and just leave himself in a position that he doesn't want to be in.
Yeah, and let's be honest, like Gooden is known as being a striker. He does have a couple submissions here and there, but when I look at Nurmagomedov,
man, it's tough.
It's tough. There's a couple extra M's and G's in there. Yeah. When I look at that fight, sure, he is coming off of a loss at UFC on ESPN 21, but the man usually gets it done in decision. I'm seeing punches, Kimuras, triangle. Yep. The man can do everything. I think it's going to be by submission for Abu Akar.
and
Nurmagomedov.
Yeah, I know. And then this is one thing me and you have spoken on. If I see a Russian, he's in.
Yeah,
he's in.
The Russians are taking over.
Put him in the play.
Dana's trying to make it happen with the Asian community and Chinese community. The Russians are taking over.
These guys are swimming in the middle of winter upstream rivers. They're wrestling bears. Like, lock it in.
It's nuts. Listen, you can make these bets right now and make these picks and not have to spend any money at all, and in the process win a proper 12 dartboard. If you want to do that, go to the Art of Combat on Twitter right now. Sign up. Make your picks. You put your name, your email address in, the options, and then when you get to Stipe and Francis, you got to pick the method of victory. Do it correctly, and first person to do it correctly is going to win that proper 12 dartboard. It's free money. Like you're not losing anything by making these picks. My friend Felicia was like, I just picked him based on who has the coolest name. I'm like, that's cool. Like, do whatever you want. So those are our picks for UFC 260. If you're just checking into the podcast, now we're going to do a betting video as well. So look out for that later on tonight on the Art of Combat on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And make sure that you support Serenity CBD Medical as well. Use that promo code WSN15 for 15% off of your purchase. I can't recommend them enough, and it's not just because Matt's sitting here. I mean it. So, and I wanted to cordially invite you, Matt. If you've got nothing going on, you're more than welcome to come here for the watch party tomorrow.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it.
So tomorrow, UFC 260, we're going to be doing a live watch party that's going to be kicking off right here in the studio. We're going to be watching on the big screen. I've had so many people ask, like, can you put the camera on the stream? No. Dana White will come through in a helicopter with a bomb vest and blow us all up. Like, he will do that. None of that. But we're going to be having a great time. It's always, it's a nice, like, you know, and I don't want to talk bad about a certain wing place where it's bro haven for these fights. It may be called Buffalo Wild Wings. I hated going to watch the fights there because it's nothing but bros drinking and like, Khabib, I could beat Khabib. Like, no, it's just a whole bunch of bros getting together watching fights without fighting and saying you're better than actual athletes. So make sure that you join us. That wraps up this podcast. Make sure that you subscribe, follow us, share with your friends, and we'll be back on Monday to talk about these results right